not a whole lot further.
Yeah. Line up the table. We'll call you up when we're ready for you.
Yeah, sit down.
Yeah, go to your room.
Yeah.
Go to your room. Well,
Go to your corner.
all right. So, thanks for playing our game. Yeah. Guess let us know when you're live and we have some lovely party. Oh, we're on already?
Yeah.
All right. Good evening and welcome to the February 2023 meeting of the Rocky Mountain Railroad Club. And thank you to all of you that are out here on Valentine's Day and those that are watching remotely. And yeah. Also known as Singles Awareness Days for those that are of that persuasion that by choice or not choice. But just gonna go around the room quick and see if we have any visitors here on this side, and how about on this side? Guess we'll.
He'll bring you a mic. You can tell us who you are. Stand up
Yeah,
and
I'm
say hi.
Doug. I'm from San Jose, California.
All right. He said he's been here in years past, but it's been a millennium or something. So. Anybody on this side that's first time visitor, guest? Nope, they're all hiding.
I guess I'll just take this time to say that we're been a little behind getting some of our renewal recordings done of people that have renewed. So just hang in there with us. But if you have not renewed yet for the 2023 year, please do so either on the website through PayPal or mail a check in with the forms that are available in off the website, RockyMountainRailroadClub.org. And those of you out in Zoom and YouTube land, we'd also encourage you to be members if you are not already. We've got a lot of members that have kind of gotten older and passed on, and we would like to extend that to the younger generation as well, and just ask that you help us out, and then you can get our newsletter that we produce every month. And we've recently changed from just a paper and email version only to now a inline email version. And then we've been kind of playing around with copying and pasting literally the components of that and making them so we can print it out. And hopefully February came out a little bit better than January. And then we should have all the font sizes fixed by March for those of us with older eyes that require reading glasses, and so you can actually see it, and try not to compromise too many qualities and shrink the pictures down too low. So we'll get a balance there. So, and so we'll also, if you have renewed and you got one of my emails that said, please renew, if you did renew and you haven't emailed already, please do email us back and let us know that you did pay, and we will make sure to get you taken care of. So otherwise we'll be kind of manually scrubbing lists and try to get there. But last I looked, I had about 90 people that I didn't show as renewed, and that seems a little high. So probably a lot of that's just our records that aren't there, but we have been losing roughly 20 to 30 people a year. So it's not all that unusual, but still we would rather not lose anybody. But we realize people do get older and pass on, or budget constraints for some of the people on fixed income. It is a little bit of a stretch to renew memberships at multiple places. So if you do choose us, we thank you for that. And if you choose to renew memberships other places, we understand. So, so over to you, Dave.
So if you just tuned in and you don't know who we are, this is the February meeting of the Rocky Mountain Railroad Club. For those of you in TV land, Andy Dell is our current president. I'm Dave Schaff, vice president. If people are not a member and they want to come to one of our meetings and join at one of our meetings, we will give you a copy of the club's history up to a few years back. We're not quite up to today. Next up, I was going to ask Chip to come up and give us some updates on current events. Come on up.
There you go.
Testing. Well, today's the anniversary of the St. Valentine's Massacre of Denver. Oops, I gotta move. No, he told me to move. Anyways, St. Valentine's was a date on February 14th, 2016, when the Rio Grande Burnham shops, which had been taken over, of course, by the Union Pacific, was finally closed and consolidated. Folks that were working at the time in Denver had several choices. One, they could take a little buyout. Two, they could move to a different location, or three, they could retire. And of course, some of our friends retired. Meanwhile, local news or current news, I've been told that not one, but three former Santa Fe El Capitan cars that were at Gateway That's a, what do you want to call it, car storage remodeling operation in Madison, Illinois. Has sold not one, but those 3 cars to the Railroading Heritage of Midwest America, which is, of course, in Silvis, Illinois. That's also where the UP 3985 is now being worked on by those gentlemen who had it moved there back in October, November last year. Also, we have some heavy metal moving from Texas up to Fort Carson. So if you're along the joint line or out there on the Lyman subdivision, you might see some Army equipment on the move. And then the gen sets, there was about 10 of them in Denver that have been stored at 36th Street, have been moved to North Yard for unknown reasons. The gen set switch engines never were used in Colorado. They were always used in California and Texas for about 10 years. And as soon as the quote lease agreement was done, UP stored them here in Colorado. So with that, back to you.
Maybe they don't rust as much.
Yeah.
Oh, wasn't there a recent move by Rocky Mountaineer Engines that
Oh.
you might have seen that?
Yeah, the Rocky. Okay, good. The Rocky Mountaineer ran 2 light engines from Denver's 36th Street yard across the Union Pacific's Moffett Tunnel route to Glenwood Springs yesterday, bright and early. And then they ran them back today. So guessing they're qualifying a crew or something, but Rocky Mountaineer was up there in the snow in western Colorado, which is of course getting a lot of snow tonight. Anything else? Of course.
So we got one more. The member from just a member from the crowd there that had asked if you knew anything about traffic still on the Craig branch.
Very light. There's a train that goes up there once, maybe twice a week. Hayden still does their coal business up there, and it's just not as busy as it used to be. Bottom line is we're just not exporting a lot of coal from our coal mines to other generating plants around the country.
Come on up, Nathan. Nathan's going to talk to us about another feature of the Rocky Club.
So for those of you who have never seen me because I hide behind the computer instead of in front of it, I'm Nathan Holmes. I'm the guy who makes most of this stuff work every month. But what I'm here to talk to you about today is, so the Rocky Mountain Railroad Club has a partner organization, well, a peer organization, really, the Rocky Mountain Railroad Historical Foundation. It's our charitable arm. And every year we try to award 5 small grants up to $1,000 each to railroad organizations that are trying to get small projects done in the summer. We're mostly targeting smaller organizations that don't really have their own fundraising arms. So, the big museums and stuff, they have the power to write the big grant proposals and they have people dedicated to this. It's the small guys who are, they're restoring a historic piece of equipment in a park. They're trying to scan a whole bunch of historic documents and make them available to researchers and, railroad enthusiasts. It's those sort of projects. Once again, we'll be awarding 5 this year, and we'll have the documentation you need on our website shortly. So RockyMountainRailroadClub.org. We'll put a link up there. There'll be a document that describes, what we're looking for, what the conditions are. Basically, give us a 1-page summary of here's what you want to do for this summer. Here's your plans. Here's your budget. And here's what you'd like us to contribute toward. Those are due at the end of April. You can either email them, which is preferred, or you can snail mail the proposals to us. And then in May, the board will look at those, evaluate them, and we'll select recipients and hopefully get you checks by the end of May, just so we're clear which month. We've traditionally announced at the June meeting, but Keith generally tries to get the checks out as soon as he talks to the bookkeeper after the meeting. Yeah, that's why I'm kind of fudging this. So thanks for putting me all in the bind here, guys. Yeah, things are a little different this year, so we're working on it. So bear with us, but we've been doing this now for about 7 or 8 years, and it's a tradition we'd like to continue. Also, we'll try to get, as the year goes on, we'd like reports back from every one of these organizations, so we can show our members, here's what we're doing with your money, your contributions, the things we, a lot of the money we raise is from books and magazines and DVDs and such that people will donate to the club and will sell at train shows and such, or just straight up donations. And we like to show people, here's what we're doing with your money. We hope you think it's a worthwhile, effort to focus that on railroad preservation. For those who don't know, the Historical Foundation was started back when the club had equipment like Rio Grande Southern 20 and Denver and Intermountain Car number 25 and some of the other preservation projects. But, as a club, we're starting to age. We don't have the wherewithal anymore to actively restore equipment on our own. So we wanted to do something productive with this 501c3 that we have set up. And the grant program is what's sort of become of that. So anyway, short version, if you have an organization that has a project, have a look at our website in the next couple of weeks. We'll have the request for proposals out there. Get it into us by April 30th. If you aren't working on a project yourself, but an organization that might be interested, spread the word for us. Help us get the word out there so we maximize our impact on worthwhile projects. Also, I should mention, because this is worldwide now, we try to primarily focus on projects within the Intermountain West, Colorado, Wyoming, Utah, New Mexico, the states that the club has traditionally touched. That doesn't rule out anybody else. It just says that local projects are kind of going to get priority if we have to choose. So that's all I got. Dave, all yours. I'm going back to hiding now.
Okay. Here's a quick note. Pretty well-known person around here that took a lot of photos over the years. Ron Hill has passed away about a month ago. The last 2 years, instead of a club banquet, because people like to have a little more space since COVID, and also it's harder to find an affordable place to have a big banquet. We've been the last 2 years at the Railroad Museum and had a picnic with barbecue, and we were able to get rides behind steam, and looks like they've made a spot for us at the museum again this year. We will have details soon, but probably May the 14th. So you might want to pencil that into your calendar. May the 14th, we'll figure out the details and the cost and what exactly we will get for a ride, but we think they will have steam for us that weekend. Also, our secretary of the board, Steve Seber, is involved with the live steam folks out at Byers, Colorado, and they are interested in having us come out for another Rocky Mountain Railroad Club visit sometime, probably late summer, early fall. So we will let you know about that. Also, for those of you in the room here, if you would silence your phones so that they don't go off during the show, then somebody will be less embarrassed that way. And I'll mention real quick, next month's program will be presented via long distance by Blair Koistra down in Dallas, Fort Worth. Tonight's guy, come on up. Now, he's been on the edge of his seat up to this moment. So Mark Huber is here, and he comes up with a little different angle on video and stills and stuff like that. He's going to show us a lot of stuff about Rio Grande Southern number 20 that for many years was owned by the Rocky Mountain Railroad Club. And he also was at the Durango and Silverton's photo special event over this weekend. So we might get a little of that. So I will let you talk and start the show.
All right. Well, thank you, Dave. And thank you for having me out, everybody. My name is Mark Huber. I work full-time at the Colorado Railroad Museum. My official title is groundskeeper / restoration / maintenance / operations specialist. So I take out the trash, mow the lawn. Thank you. And then I fix the locomotives, make parts, and operate the locomotives as well. So a little bit of everything, a lot of fun stuff there. Some of you who are familiar with YouTube and my YouTube channel, I run a YouTube channel that basically talks about railroading and preservation called HYCE, which has nothing to do with trains and is the name that I'm stuck with. How do you spell that? HYCE. If you want to take a look on the YouTube, I've got a bunch of different videos with more stuff in this vein about like you're going to see, some other stuff. Some of it's instructional, some of it's funny, some of it is me and my other train cohort just having fun with the history and joking around. So it's generally a pretty good time. But because it was asked by Bill and many others previously, Heis comes from the name Hyacinth Macaw, which is the blue bird that's in the logo of the channel. It has nothing to do with trains, but was a name I came up with a million years ago, and what I've used for video games for a long time. And I kind of got the notoriety on YouTube from the video games. And so the name is there and I'm stuck with it, and there you go. But it's recognizable, and people, it's been like almost every day, every week at the museum, someone comes up and says, "Hey, you're the guy on YouTube," and it's still strange, and I still don't know what to do about it, but it's pretty cool. And I know that I've had some people start to work in preservation or volunteer because of the stupid YouTube videos that I've made. So I was doing it for fun, and now it's kind of turning into this bigger thing. But I figured when Dave asked me out, hey, we could show off some of the cool stuff that I've gotten to do, because a lot of what I get to show off is footage of the locomotives, and in weird spots, sticking little cameras in tight nooks and finding new ways to film the locomotives so that we can make sure that they're mechanically good, for one thing, and as well to troubleshoot things, and as well to learn about them, because I've filmed some things that I bet the folks at Schenectady and Baldwin back in the 1800s would have killed to see. So it's pretty cool to see these new angles and things. So why don't we start the video here, and there'll be cards in between that we can pause and go over any questions if people have on any specific things here. No worries. So I figured we would start with the start of what the locomotive does in the house. And one thing about the RGS-20 is that it's a very wet engine. So if you've ever wondered what cylinder cocks are for, that is it. Very, very damp. So we actually have the brakes on, and we're parked, leading things out, as Brett will explain momentarily.
Dusty sets the brakes, opens the throttle, and it goes all over the place.
Just like that. So up next is Stephenson's valve gear. This has been some of my favorite footage that I've gotten. That's going from neutral into forwards, about to take off. You see the motion drop down, and you can watch as the different links in the motion actually start to move as the engine does. It's also a great look at the suspension on the locomotive on either side, and as well watching the actual journal bearing ride in the crown brace. You can see the lubrication. Kind of mesmerizing, isn't it? So here's a side look at the same thing. We're looking at the eccentrics on the back. The engine's working harder, and you can see the engineer just hooked it up, which raises the links, and it actually limits the travel, so that the center pivot of those links is now moving less than it was when it was further down. And that's what actually limits the valve cutoff. And it's all set by the motion of those four eccentrics. One for forwards on each side, one for reverse on each side. You want to pause there if there's any questions on Stephenson valve gear, because that's a whole thing. Anyone? All right, well then carry on. Oh yeah, if you got anything on the digital land. Yeah, I know. Well, I've got some of wall shirts, but wall shirts is really challenging to film because it's off the side of the engine and you run into clearance trying to get the camera mounted. But now that I have 4 GoPros, I might try and composite something with several mounts. We'll see how that goes when we next run 491. Yes. So this is the lead truck of the locomotive. And we're actually mounted to the lead truck right now, staring at the underside of the swing links, and the #1 axle is what we see at the bottom of the screen. Right in that section there, the engine slipped, and it centered back up. We're going through a sharp curve. Lead truck is guiding us through it, but when you lose traction, you no longer have that guiding effect because you're no longer propelling the lead truck. So it's really cool. You can see that the post in the middle is actually attached to the smoke box, the underside of the cylinder saddle. And that's actually how everything pivots and how the lead truck guides the locomotive through the curves. And again, you can see that we've got good lubrication on our bearings as well. And now this is one of my favorite things, and one of the videos that's done the best for me is watching the wheels of the locomotive and watching the whole thing as it goes around. So we first have a total look at it, and this is what cylinder cocks look when they're no longer full of water. That's just steam. So much better. The engineer shuts them pretty right away. 20 is such a good sounding engine. I love it. But you can see just how the lead truck tracks at speed now, coming through the switches, how it helps guide the first set of drivers through. And you can see how it both pivots and translates. It's just a good sounding engine. Now this is looking from behind the first pony truck wheel towards it. You can see how the flange cuts its own path through the snow. But watch it how far it rides over on the rail. It goes from almost, centered in the tread all the way over, depending on what part of the curve we're in, as the truck is rotating as the curvature changes. This is the second pony wheel. Still the lead truck. And you can see the same thing. It rides right to the edge of that wheel's taper, as each wheel set has a slight taper on the tread profile that helps keep everything centered and keeps the wheels spinning at the right speed. This is the number 1 driver. We're on straight track right now, going through all the switches at the bottom of the grade. And as we cut through the first switch, getting into the loading platform here, you can see that we've got a huge gap between the flange and the head of the rail now that we're in the curve. What we learned by using camera footage like this is that when a locomotive hits the curve, when it's pulling tonnage at speed, it tries to keep going straight. And so you end up having a huge gap on the inside wheel at the front, but the back wheel is going to end up scraping against the rail, which is kind of counterintuitive. You can just see just how far that rail wanders on the driver. Here's the blind driver, the number 2, and you can also see the eccentrics in the Stevenson motion again, which is quite fun. So blind drivers are cool because they have 2 tapers. They have a taper on the normal way on the outside, and then on the inside they have a reverse taper, and it's flat in between. And that's to help the wheel track correctly across either side. So right when we're on straight track right now, it rides right in the middle. But as we get in the curve, it's going to ride on the normal taper, okay? And let the wheel move on the outside. And there's sand. Ever want to feel what that looks like? There we go. There's the sander. And you can see just how finely it gets crushed. That's exclusive to you. That's not been on YouTube yet. And here's the number 3 drivers. This is our last wheel. And it's also a fun view because we're on part of the suspension. That's how we clamped to it. So you can see how much the box is actually bouncing in comparison to us. That's us bouncing, not the box. But here we are on the straight track, riding kind of in the middle of the driver's tread. Everything's centered. And then when we start getting into the curve, this is where it's counterintuitive because the tender is dragging behind us with all the train behind it. We have no gap between the flange and the rail. We're riding kicked over. Normally you would think that the wheel would try and stay centered and kick itself out, but when you're talking about a whole rigid locomotive, it ends up crabbing over all the way. So the back of the engine rides the inside, and the front of the engine rides on the outside. And again, you can see how effective the sand is, even the second driver back. This 20 sanders are right behind the number 1 driver, so this number 2 and the number 3 are what actually get the sand. So this has been, well, I guess we can pause if we have any questions about wheels or wheel things while we're here. I have yet to lose a GoPro, thankfully. Yes. I have been worried about losing GoPros all the time because I put them in dangerous situations, as you're about to see, all the time. Thankfully, they're not super uber expensive, but I've been prepared emotionally and monetarily to replace one for quite some time. So, Mr. Schaff. Okay, so a GoPro camera is they're designed for people who do like crazy snowboarding sports or water sports or stuff. They're a little camera, like even smaller than your fist. And they can record for maybe 40, 45 minutes, but they record really high quality footage, and they're waterproof and all sorts of stuff like that. So they're suited for a lot of, unique environments like that. I'm not the first person to use them on a steam engine before. I was actually talking with the guys at the DNS this weekend when I was at the charter. Spoilers for later. And they've been using GoPros for a long time to check things out on their test rides and make sure things are cool, because they're small and they're easy to rigidly mount to something. They just take a little 1/4-20 bolt that you can bolt to any kind of camera mount and just stick it in there. So, thankfully for me, I've got a setup rigged up where I've got magnets on mine, so I can magnet them to anything steel, which on a steam locomotive there is a lot of. So it's really easy to mount them even to the underside of stuff. I mean, for those videos with the 20s wheels, I had a clamp that was biting the backside of the brake shoe for the driver brakes with an arm off of it that then had the magnet that was then holding the camera staring at the backside of the wheel. And it's, it feels a little precarious, but with 20 going 15 mile an hour, they don't fall off. And I should have put that footage in. I actually put one of the magnets on the side of 20's main rod. And so it's doing the bunny hop like this all the way down the track. And it never fell off. It did start to look at the track rather than straight ahead, but never fell off. So I trust those magnets, knocking on wood now that I've cursed myself. So anyways, I guess we can carry on. We're going to look at the fire here. So this is repurposing a GoPro bicycle cam to bring you shovel cam. So using a bike handlebar mount, we've mounted it to this coal scoop, and you can see the fun game of getting more coal after ready, because you always have to be ready with these little engines. When they demand coal, they really need it. So we check the fire. That's what it looks like. All right, where do we need coal? So this sort of footage had been some of my favorites until this, the beer stein edition of the fire cam. I have a liter beer stein, and the cameras are waterproof, but they overheat really quickly. So you put it in the beer stein, you fill the beer stein full of cold water, and then you stick the camera as close to the fire as physically possible and as much as you can hold it there because it's really hot. And here's what 20 looks like taken off out of the station with a tonnage train. The draft is powerful enough to suck the water out of the glass. This is some of my favorite footage I've ever gotten, and you're going to get to see it in slow-mo in just a second here. So every time the engine chuffs, of course, that's sending all that air through the fire, and that's what's making all of that action happen in the box. And now in 4K slow-mo. So this is in 8x slow motion, as slow as the camera will record. Kind of looks like hell in there a little bit. And that's one chuff. The first chuff. And you wonder why coal burners cause fires. Yeah, that's the fire bed literally being ripped off. And this is not quite tonnage for 20. It's very close. So a very challenging train to run. But each individual chuff hits that hard on that locomotive when we're taking off up the 3.5% grade going clockwise at the museum. This was during Polar Express. If you look, you can see the bigger lumps of coal are not disturbed at all, but the smaller pieces, the medium-sized pieces, actually lift. And then all of the itty-bitty pieces are what are actually flying through the fire. And I'm still 6 inches away from the fire door, and it is still pulling the water out the top of the beer stein, because that's how violent the draft is that the engine's producing. Yeah, rest in peace, the goldfish bowl. Yes, Andy was there. On 491, I had a goldfish bowl that I originally used. That was a little bit easier to fit the camera in, but it was a little thin and it heat cycled one too many times, and it started to crack as I was holding it, and we put it out of its misery. So we went to the beer stein, and the beer stein also still hanging on. So yay for that. And worst case, if that one breaks, I do have 3 more. So why have one? You know, you're going to have several liters of beer if you're going to do it, right? Oh yeah, that would be a fire hazard, but I mean, you know, that could be fun. Yeah. No blowbacks here, please. So the idle temperature with no draft of a coal burning fire with bituminous coal is 1800 degrees Fahrenheit. So with each chuff right here, we're probably doing 25 to 2800 Fahrenheit. If we were working tonnage at speed, absolute tonnage with a big engine that causes a lot of draft, you'd get over 3000 degrees. Which is why you have to have water over the crown sheet, everybody, because that'll melt steel. I think I just left this whole clip on an 8x slow-mo, so it'll end eventually. It's neat that you can also watch the fire get sucked up and around the keyhole at the top of it. So 20's fire bed is only about 20 or 22 inches wide, but then the firebox tapers out in a keyhole like an old skeleton key. And you can watch as each chuff goes, the air is even pulling all the way around, so the fire's licking every part of that box. And that's how they got more heating surface out of a small fire back in the day in a small profile. And Leighton was firing during this, so I'm pretty sure he's cursing me out for letting all this cold air in his fire at this point. Any other questions while we're staring at fire? Because that's fun. Oil burners can get even hotter than a coal burner, depending on draft, depending on the atomization of the oil and what fuel oil they're using. And it's really highly dependent on the fuel oil. But if you're using bunker C like they used to, you could get hotter than a coal fire. And that's part of the reason why oil burners are lined with fire brick. It's because the fire can change so instantaneously and get so much hotter that it can actually scar the steel from changing in temperature so quickly. So you have to mitigate against that. So if any change in draft or any change in fire doesn't cause a super quick change to the steel itself. And we can get away with not lining our fireboxes with brick because we can't really suck the coal out the stack that easily. I've seen some people try, but you still have some even after a pretty bad slip. So. And now that it's been running for a while in between chuffs, you can see how tall the flames were. That's the constant draft making that fire work harder and harder. Yes, it does. The cyclone definitely changes how the fire burns because it's adding a bit of resistance for that air to get out. So it decreases the draft compared to a master mechanics front end a little bit. And we get a slow-mo me turning to look at Leighton with the camera. I nailed it on the edit last night. My apologies, folks. But yes, as the cyclone spins the exhaust, you get a little bit of a reduction in velocity, but not too much, which is why they liked the cyclones over the screens on the Grand. You'll note that when the big Ks got cyclone front ends, they lost the spark arresters. So if you had pictures of the engines running in the 40s and 50s, they had a cyclone front end because they didn't have the spark arrestor. But if they had the spark arrestor, they still had a master mechanics front end because they're more likely to draw that hot goodness that we just saw straight out the stack. It does also add a bit of directionality to the Firebox. Certain sides, okay, we can pause here. Certain sides of the Firebox with a cyclone actually will burn hotter one versus the other. So because of the one direction spin. Anyway, any other questions before we move on to the photo charter from the weekend? It's interesting. So at the museum, we try to keep it basically level. When you're working tonnage, if you're to fire up Cumbres, which I've fortunately had the chance to do one time, you really need to know where the engine burns the hottest, and then you have to allocate more coal there. So in a K36 going over Cumbres, you've got pretty even the whole box, but you build just an absolute wedge of coal at the back of the Firebox. They burn hottest at the back. If you had it level all the way across, they would burn to the grates within 30, 40 seconds, and the rest of the fire would be okay. So you double or triple the thickness across the back. And then as the engine works and does shimmy down the railroad 10, 15 mile an hour, everything kind of shakes and vibrates. And depending on the design of the Firebox, the coal will either stay put or it won't. The K36s have a sloped Firebox, so it sort of tends to shimmy to the front as they go. K37, like 491, is flat, and then it tilts right at the front so that you can attempt to throw the coal 2/3 of the way from me to Frank all the way over there, which is about how far it feels like, and then pray that it shimmies down into the front. But it does move around on the railroad. One fun thing we had with 491, one of the first times we were running her at the museum, because I was the first person to fire her with the train since 1963. That was fun. Anyway, we had a frog at the Noago switch by the water tower that was sticking up too high, the part of the switch, and so it was pounding real hard. And I put a basketball-sized piece of coal in the back corner, knowing that she would just casually munch on it. I wouldn't have to worry about the back corners for a while. And we go around the railroad, we hit that frog. I checked the fire, and the basketball had rolled 2 feet into the middle of the fire, and it's just this giant piece of coal in the middle of my fire. It's like, really, sweetheart? You're going to do that to me? Okay. Go around another lap, boom, and then it's another 2 feet further. And over the course of like 2 or 3 trips around the museum, sets a lap. So like 9 laps, 9 times over the frog, it moved from the back left corner of the Firebox to the front right. And it's just like, okay. You said steam engines have personalities. 491 likes to mess with me. Okay. Any other questions before we move on? Brian? Okay. It takes a long time, and it depends on how you do it. So back in the day, it was very different than now. So for those online, he's asking, how long does it take for a cold steam engine to come all the way up to temp and pressure? So ready to run from absolutely cold. So if you're absolutely cold, everything's in, all the plugs are in, you're full of water, you just need to put the fire in. Ideally, depending on the size of the locomotive, our little engines, we take about 8 hours to do, 20 or 346. 491, we take about 12 hours to do. And the reason for that is that the steel actually expands significantly when you're talking about 40 or 50 degrees cold to 400 degrees when everything's up to temperature and pressure. And okay, well, metal expands a little bit when it's hot, we know that, but when you have a 6-foot diameter boiler that's 25, 30 feet long, that turns into almost an inch of expansion, and you hear it as the engine heats up. It goes boom, and it scoots back on its skates, the shoes that the Firebox sits on. And so if you do that quickly, you are very liable to break something. And the railroads back in the day had a ton of manpower and didn't care if they broke a stable, because guess what? They had a division of people whose job was to change stables. If we break a stable at the museum, we end up calling the Durango and Silverton and saying, hey, can you send a Boilermaker? So we take our time. We make sure that we do everything as slow and nice and gentle as we can for the locomotives to preserve them the best we can. Back in the day, they would toss air on the fire. They would have a draft on the stack, or they'd have air chucked into it, into the blower, and they would have those things hot in 3 hours, 4 hours, maybe. I've heard legends of them being fired up from cold in an hour, hour and a half. You could put your hand on the side of the firebox, but the safety's popping, which is horrendous for the steel. But when that's the business and that's what you're there to do, and you got to run trains, that's what you got to do. And that's what the railroad did. And sometimes that's what the tourist railroads have to do too. But for those of us at the museum, you know, we run for fun or for display or interpreting, right? So we take it nice and easy, make sure the engines are taken care of the best they can. So that's why we take as long as we do. And most folks tend to do it that way these days too, if they can, if they have that luxury. So good question. So as you will see here, my friends and I, that's me on the left, my buddy Brett in the middle, who's the tallest man in Colorado, I swear. And then Leighton, who's standing on snowshoes in the snow to be near as tall as Brett, who's sunk down, is on the far right there. We all went down to the Durango and Silverton's winter photo charter this weekend. And being that it was themed as it was 1973, they backdated the K-28 with the diamond stack and relettered the whole consist of cars with Denver and Rio Grande Western and Rio Grande speed lettering and the circus train font on the cars. We thought it would be funny if we dressed like we were from the 1970s a little ridiculously. So I was your stereotypical hippie musician, as I am, and those were bell-bottom corduroys. So. And then Leighton's red suit is all corduroy, and Brett was just trying to be a bit of a cowboy. So we had a lot of fun with it, and people kind of gave us two looks at first, like, oh, okay, whatever, and then didn't say anything. And then we got called up to be in the crew shot at the end. So, and then they're like, oh, they were doing it on purpose. They're not just weird. So, yeah. Anyway, so first we can pause on each picture as they come up, but these are the shots that I got, and then we'll have video at the end that will be upcoming on the YouTube later, but a sneak preview just for the Rocky Club. So this is one of my favorite pictures from the night shoot. It started off with a night photography session at the Roundhouse. The 76 was our K-28 in question under steam. And then behind it is the 493. And I love this picture because it was one of the few of the ones that I took that turned out good, because I'm not a very good photographer. I'm more of a video guy. And it's got 493. And 493 is special for me because there was a brief glinting period of time when the museum thought we were going to get the 493. And so who other than myself and a couple of my friends were the people to drop the binders in the snow in Silverton in 2016, and then do the UT survey of the engine. And then I pulled the throttle out in Durango and surveyed the whole firebox and did a whole bunch of work on the engine only to watch it sit for a couple of years because politics, and we didn't end up getting it and all this stuff, whatever. But there it is. And it wasn't under steam, but it was ready to be under steam. And it's like, hey, I'm part of the reason that happened. That's kind of cool. Anyway, we can carry on to the next picture. They should be spaced like 5 seconds apart. Oh, there we go. Yeah, so this one's probably my favorite shot. And here we have the next one. They're 5 seconds piece. Back it up like that's all right. Got to be quick on the clicks, man. There we are. Well, tell Big Deal that he should be at the meeting and he should not be bugging you. Unless he's trying to give me crap via you, in which case, fair play. He was also dressed like it was the 1970s. So I don't know what I did to get this picture to come out like this, but it's magical and everything is in focus, and 476 looked really pretty. So I really like that picture. Anyway. Yeah, stop paying attention to Big Deal. He's not that big of a deal. Here's one of the first run-bys, 76 coming up at speed. It was fun. We could probably let the rest of these just run. I'll save you the trouble. Oh. Here we are approaching the high bridge. And this is actually a going away shot, but the steam's looking the right way. You can tell that Nick is not looking the right way though, so they were backing up. Here we are at concrete. I can't remember what it's called, the concrete wall. Cement wall, yes. And then that's Goblin Fire, and the smoke was great. High line, which of course you have to have a high line picture. And then this is Russell throwing a snowball at Kyla, which I somehow got in shot picture. So here's getting to the video portion of things, and this is what they told us would be the last time you would watch ashes get dropped from a coal burner at the winter photo charter, which might be foreshadowing. This would be the first run by, and a small amount of a slip there. That was fun. One of my favorite things was Nick was having too much fun with the whistle all the time through the charter. But perhaps not in this clip. Maybe it's in the later clips. Grand yellow frogs, derailers, everything. And then the surface lettering on the side of the cars. It's a short consist, but it's fun. This is them sanding the flues, getting up Hermosa Hill, right through the big crossing. So you could see that crazy difference in the exhaust as they're dumping sand into the fire. Get all the particulate builds up out the stack. Nick actually had a set on the train to work it as hard as he could, and it ruined my coffee, as you can see. Let's go around the High Line, and looks like this is the point of going to the Durango and Silverton, is this pretty much. That's Nick having fun with the whistle. Some kind of pretty free chime. There's some great audio of it later. Cylinder cock that's used to shut on this one side, which is one of the most annoying things you can run into as an engineer. Bridge. Little curve there makes it easy to slow. for that one. No worries. So that last clip was in the moment one of the coolest things I've experienced watching Steam. Hearing that engine, the 81, come up through the canyon with that reverb behind it was like, I had chills in the moment. It was like, oh man, don't screw up this camera shot because this is gonna be awesome. They had told us the night before when it was putting around during the night shoot that it's the loudest K they've ever heard. And it's like, it's a K36. I've got a K37. It has more tractive effort. I'm sure it's not that loud. But it had freshly bored cylinders, new rings, new valves, everything. So it was just set up to be as loud and mean as possible. And he comes around the corner and it was deafening in person. It was like, no, they're right. Yeah, that's the loudest Rio Grande K I've ever heard. So while we're paused right here, this is what it looks like to put the cameras in danger once again. This is one of the GoPro cameras, about the size of your fist, maybe a little smaller. And I just dug a little hole in the snow next to the track because I wanted to get the train running over you shot. And there's a little bit more fun to be had with that. So we can continue on here. 60. Yeah, 60 people, and it was sold out both days. I only went the first day. So yeah, definitely interest. All of them except for 481, which is the only one that's in service that burns coal. And then 478 and 486, which are both out of service. And they have a new fire pan and everything they need to do another K36. They're not sure if it'll be the 86, which needs a 1472 and a whole rebuild and everything, or the 81 that wouldn't need much. So the numbers of coal burners are dwindling, and I love shoveling coal. I love the feeling of that. Getting to say I fired coal over Cumbres is going to be something that I get to live with forever and may go away someday. But at the end of the day, it's the railroad commitment to run steam. And this is the way they can run steam. I'm happy for it. You know, if it was oil burning or no steam, let them burn oil. That's my 2 cents. So, yeah, the smell was different. It's fine. It's fine. It also means that the smell is better because you're not breathing in the coal smoke, which is really bad for you. But maybe that's why we're all, you know, just a little strange in the head. So you can watch just how close the main rod comes to touching the camera. But we're in just a different spot to be a little closer. So I planted the camera, and this was fun in the snow. Russell had to give me crap for it. Shots like that either look really cool or really dumb. Hopefully it'll be really cool.
How wide is that lens?
Very.
Oh God.
Like it just caught you falling entirely. Yes.
Nice job, Dylan.
He told me that he'd be really mad if it didn't end up on YouTube, so I figured I could show the Rocky Club.
Many a time. It is, maybe it's around railhead height. It's fine. I own 4 of those because I've been worried about destroying them several times. So if I do lose one, it's not the end of the world.
And the shot does end up working out pretty well, I think. Benefit of oil is they were able to do that scene with all the smoke, and then they can just shut the fire off afterwards. So they don't have to listen to the safety for the next 2 hours, which is cool. This is the other cool audio. love that bit because the reverb makes it seem like, oh, the train's a mile away, and then it's just there. Oh.
No, it's my GoPro. I set it there.
Someone didn't know what they thought I dropped my camera and I was doing another run over. No, I put it there on purpose. So that's everything I had for video and stuff. The last fun thing about that clip though is just the sound of a 3-chime whistle like that echoing through the canyon with the minor chord it plays, because it literally plays a musical minor 3. Listening to that echo off the canyons is just like one of the coolest things I've gotten to hear. So it was a great photo charter. Well, thank you guys.
Do we have some questions, Nathan, from the online folks? I was going to say maybe you could tell us a little more about the charter at the Durango and Silverton. Were you guys the only train on the line that day, or did you have to work around other trains?
We had to work around the 481's train, which was one of the clips in the video, the Cascade turn. And so it was a little interesting because we met at Tacoma. We left before then. We left at like 7:15. We parked at Tacoma in the hole. The 481 came running past, that was that video clip. And then they went into the Y at Cascade and we blitzed past them and did some shots past Cascade. They went back home and then we backed into the Y at Cascade and then backed up north again to get shots facing the other way past Cascade, like 3 miles or something, and then rode back. And of course the 81 and everything was put away already.
You didn't have to avoid 3 other trains.
No,
Oh,
just
that's
one.
good.
Yes, it made it a lot easier.
And you said it was about 60 people both days.
60 people both days. The night shoot was maybe 50 on the Friday night. So Friday night, then Saturday. I was only there the Saturday. We drove home on Sunday. And then Sunday, yeah, they're sold out both days, 60 people. It was a full day. We left at 7:15, or we got to the station 7:15, left at 7:45. Train was back into town at like 5. So it was a full day. There was a nice lunch they gave us. There was plenty of adult beverages to be had on board if that was your persuasion. So it was a good time.
If there's no other questions on that, I was going to say we've all seen a lot of different angles of things, but I'll bet most of us have not seen the kind of wheels and gear stuff that you had in the early part. So there's something different, you know.
Yeah, hopefully so. I did see a hand back in the audience earlier for a question here. Yeah.
The question was, what's a cyclone front end?
Yeah, so the cyclone front end is what the Grand ended up putting in all the big Ks, the 36s and the 37s. I don't know if the 27s or 28s got them, but basically they cut up old tender sides and they basically made a circular disc and then a second circular disc. And then they put big sheets, they're called baffles, radially around it. And so the blast nozzle sits in the middle and the stack extension in the smoke box is on top. And so as you chuff, the steam exhausts out and it causes the vacuum to swirl through those baffles. And so when you watch the exhaust on a K, they actually spin. You can see the smoke twisting as it goes up, and it's from the cyclone front end. And the thought was, if we make the cinders do more of this as they go up and out the stack, the solid particulates will be affected more than the gas. They should theoretically be put out by the time they fly out and hopefully not burn down the countryside. As well as Durango found out, when you work a K36 as hard as you can, well, Yeah, you can only get so far, but they did really help. And back in the day with the Grand, I mean, they took the spark arresters off. That was your proof in the pudding for them. And for us, the museum, we don't run 491 with the spark arrestor because we don't work it near hard enough to draw anything out. You'll watch 20 with the spark arrestor. She'll shoot tons and tons of hot embers, and we have to be really like on it with Firewatch or make sure the ground's wet or it's snowy or something to really run it. 491, you go up the hill, you might see one hot one and it gets 3 feet above the stack and it's out. And it's just the difference in the size of the locomotive, the front end devices, and really kind of ingenious thing. If you, it's not just called a Cyclone, it's also called an Anderson front end. So if you do Googling around or look in research land, an Anderson front end is what those are called. Good question. The bear trap. You CNS foamer. It's called the Ridgeway Spark Arrestor. Come on. Yes. So the Ridgeway Spark Arrestor is what we had on 346 for a long time recently after she was a bit of a pyromaniac and the fire department said you have to do this. Is not since we put the funny hat on. Yeah. So the Ridgeway is what you see on the CNS engines and what you saw on the DNS engines in the 1980s. And it was a little strange, but kind of an ingenious device where it was patented by Harry Ridgway. You take an extension of the stack at an angle with a big screen, and then inside the screen at a different angle, you have a plate with a bunch of big holes cut in it. And the thought is, if you look straight down the stack, there's no straight path for any cinder to come straight out. But there's enough surface area that the gases and exhaust isn't impeded, because the more stuff you put in the way of the exhaust, the less you make the fire do what we saw in the video. And if you want to have the steam engine go pull lots of things, you need to have the fire do that. So you want the gases to be free, but you want the cinders to go somewhere else. And so the two screens at different angles and everything, that geometry he came up with knocks them back down to a downpipe that deposits them along the track. And when we run 346 with the silly hat on, the bear trap, she leaves a snail trail of black disgusting around the whole railroad where it deposits everything. So they're ingenious. And I have gotten to watch 346 at night. It looks like a popcorn popper. You watch everything come up and it just gets funneled out. Not a single one goes out the top. It's really ingenious.
Any other questions from the internet?
Can you hear me?
Brian
the
has-
internet?
Brian's got one.
Wait, go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Was there a question from? Okay,
Yeah, there's, I don't know if you,
go ahead, Andrew.
oh, thank you. 493 that you mentioned that you were, is 493 is a K37, isn't it?
Correct. Yes.
And are they considering putting it back in service?
493 has been running since 2020. It has
Oh, it
been
has.
operational, since like January of 2020.
Yeah, burning oil.
Burning oil, but yes.
Oh, it was converted. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good question.
Any other questions? Any other from the? Go ahead, Chip.
Steam schedule.
The question is, when will the 20 run out
Yes.
at the Colorado Railroad?
When will
Museum?
20 run again? So it's a question of who's ready next, because everyone needs maintenance, because this is how steam engines work. So the next time we're steaming up is in late April. I want to say the 27th and 28th, and it's a private chartered thing for the schools in Jeffco, I think. But steam will be up, whether it's 20 or 491, I couldn't tell you. The next time after that is May 14th and 15th,
Which is one of those days that we might have a Rocky Mountain Railroad Club picnic.
indeed. And
if you're a member.
And if all things go well and everything, it will be both 20 and 491. So hopefully we should have both engines up for that. But nope,
Stay tuned.
as we got to drill a broken off stud out of 491. 20's ready to go. 20's a good girl. We fixed her. She's ready to go. But 491's got some stuff, and we got to do her annual and all that fun stuff. So hopefully in May. Yeah. A couple years, half a decade, next year. I don't
Question
know.
from the peanut gallery was, when would 346 come back?
346. So she's been out of service since November of 2021 was the last time she ran. Of course, she had her rebuild in 2007, as you well know. And so she's, 15 years past at this point. And though the museum's not subject to FRA regulations, they chose 15 years because that's when the steam engines get mad. So 15 years is rebuild time, and 346 is ready. And so, between 2021 and the end of 2022, we got like 30 or 40 tubes cut out of it, and that's it. We had 20 that needed the crosshead work. We had 491 that needed the pistons and the heads and the things and the guide bars and all that fun stuff. So we kind of focused on feeding the 2 mouths that ran last year. But since the start of the year, it's been gangbusters on 346. Just today, we took the air compressors off, took the dynamo off. We took some of the windows out. I broke one of them. Oops. Oopsie. They got the stack and the dome covers off just the other week. So she's looking less and less like a locomotive. And when it really doesn't look like a locomotive at all, we'll know just how broken it is and just how much time and money and things it'll need. But that's still probably a couple months away. So years. I don't know if it's 1 year. I don't know if it's 5. We will just see. She is. We've been going pretty much nothing other than her since the fuel tanks got in service.
They're always busy out at the museum. They never a dull moment.
Never a dull moment. Very true. Except for right after Polar. Those are very dull and on purpose.
Well, that's when you have to rest.
Yes.
These guys work really hard out there during the Polar Express and the Thomas event. So
yes.
Any other questions? Well, like I said, that we saw some stuff tonight that I would guess most of us have not seen. So
Why, thank you.
Another question? Okay. Was this Will Deal that we're waiting?
The big deal.
He presented a show for us last June, I think. But it'd be great if he'd speak up now, or else we're going to turn him off. So. Going once. Yeah, the people out in YouTube land aren't going to wait all day for this guy. So, well, listen, if you're watching this later, we're glad you joined us. So obviously everybody couldn't be here because some people had like dates and stuff since we're doing this on Valentine's Day. So we thank you for watching. We thank you for presenting.
Anytime.
Please come back whenever. And if there's nothing else, I guess we can get close to adjourning here. Like I said, next month, our presenter will be Blair Koistra. I think with fairly recent pictures, I'll have to check with him to see what exactly his program is, but that will be in our next newsletter. And for those of you that are here in the audience, if you will hang up your chairs, that'd be a lovely thing. And I guess we can end our broadcast, Mr. Nathan.